Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, especially the gentlemen out there, to another fantasy show. I am Chuck Bass, per usual. We are live in the Pepsi studio on the Jardian stage at the New Genix desk, brought to you by Shoney's. As always, I want to thank you guys. It's a great night. You've been a great crowd. You've been a great participant. You've been a great sponsor of the show. Because of you guys, I was able to afford this lavish new studio lighting, and that's what I get up in the morning for. I get up for you guys. I don't get up for all the money. I don't get up for Amazon lights. I don't get up for a beautiful Italian wife. Strike that last part from the record. I don't get up for some of those reasons. I get up for you guys. And so it's going to be a great night. Got a great show ahead of you. Going to be a great off season. Things just keep getting better. Guests are bringing the heat, going through bottles like crazy, which is a lot of fun. So here's for you guys as well. We're sipping on some Eagle Rare tonight as we get into these veterans. The fog of the last season is finally washing over us. We can start pretending that we didn't screw up everything last year. We didn't draft any busts. We drafted dingers. We didn't draft terrible teams. We drafted beautifully precise teams with logic and reason, and they just got banged up and they got hurt. And other players drafted better teams and they crushed us. Look, a lot of things happened, but we're almost past it. We're 4 weekends removed from the NFL draft. And if you drink as much as I do, that means that it's about 8 to 10 sober days of thinking and reasoning and really just living in the moment. So once we get there, once Raj takes that stage, shout out Raj, trying to figure it out how to get things going, we move on and we can put the rest of this behind us. And the reality is this is the best time of the season because it's purely hypothetical. It is the most hypothetical you can get with your takes, with what teams are going to do, with how GMs evaluate players. We're going to see pretty soon here how they feel about the rookies, how they feel about their own squad. And you know what? Somebody's going to pay the price for that, and it's usually the veterans. And we won't know that until those picks are made. And much like how Aaron Rodgers has used all of his Sky Miles that he built up over an 18 NFL career in just 2 months, tells us what teams think about him. We're going to tell you tonight what teams think about some other guys. So how are we going to do that? We're going to do some hypotheticals. We're going to ruin a few off seasons for whatever NFL players this may reach. And you know what? To help me with that, I had to find somebody who's equally as depressing. I had to find a hater, a true hater down to his core, somebody who might be able to just really crush it on the absolute hardest nails we can bring. You guys know him as a DST guru. He's an overall excellent ranker for the big boys over at FFfaceoff. I know him as the guy that is constantly trying to chemically imbalance my brain with negative neurotransmitters and negative reinforcement online via social bullying. Please welcome to the stage my good friend, Pete Nova. Pete.
What is going on? Hell of a introduction. Appreciate all of that, and I think you summed it up pretty well.
I did too. I put an embarrassing amount of work into not just thinking about that, but writing it and make sure I delivered on my lines, very much like Adrian Brody doing an Oscar speech. I felt good about it, and I felt like it was accurate. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing good, man. Relaxed, refreshed, recharged. Been taking a little bit of a social media break the last week, which has been nice because draft season's coming and things are going to start ramping up shortly. So
sure,
feeling good.
That's a good time to do it. Can we see the ring?
I don't have it on me right now.
Already learning the married tricks. This guy is to not have the ring on.
Yeah. You never know. There could be some gals out there watching the stream. You know,
of course.
That's
right. You always have to leave the open door just in case we blow up, and this is where we want to come back to. Okay, I'll ask you 2 questions, and you can pass on them if you want. Otherwise, we can get right in the meat of why I brought you on today. Where did you spend the most money on, and where did you spend the least money on?
For the wedding, I would say most money vendor-wise, photographer.
Smooth.
Least money was probably I don't even want to say. I guess it was gifts to the guests, but it wasn't even that cheap. We did like a bunch of liquid IVs.
Nice.
Snacks.
Get them pumping.
Yeah, a bunch of snacks and stuff. And we were actually bought like $400 worth of wine, but our hotel wouldn't let us put it in the bags. And so we didn't even end up giving it to everybody because we were so busy. So we have like 30 bottles of wine left over. Nothing, not the worst thing in the world.
No, a gift to yourself for having to go through the commotion that is planning a wedding and getting a bunch of shit organized and having some fun with it. So you made it through. You're doing mental health check-ins by staying off social media. We're going to ruin that all tonight. You feel good about it?
I'm ready, man. I'm charged up for this.
Good. That's what I like to hear. We'll shout out the chat real quick. Slashy, Absolute Gold, Legend, AFS All-Star. Fears he may be cooked. Craig's checking in. Still not checking Sleeper, but he's checking in on the show. I don't know which I appreciate more. We'll go with the show lights because that might get me paid. Craig, good to have you. Chuck would have everything to lose if his first two wives hadn't taken it all the way. That's right. I'm not really a big pre-mutt guy. I love paying alimony. And Player Profiler now wants to remind everybody right now, if you guys are watching the show, if you're new to the channel, if you haven't liked, subscribed, comment, all that stuff, we really appreciate you having you guys along for the ride. And, I want you guys to be there for the crash because it's coming. And I don't know when, but it's important that you're a part of the crash with me. And the only way you can do that is by liking, subscribing, commenting, sharing with your friends, emailing your coworkers, posting the link on LinkedIn, whatever it is you guys have to do to get the job done. I know you can do it, and I believe in you. All right. Pete, enough of me and my absolute nonsense rambling. So tonight's theme, I think it's kind of a good one. I try to get creative with my themes, at least in some way. Not necessarily to stand out for search engine optimization, but more just like what are things people aren't necessarily talking about yet that they might talk about while the draft is going on, or maybe as we get deeper into the offseason. Tonight's theme is basically veterans that have the most to lose at the NFL draft. So I'll kick it to you here and ask you, where did your mind go when I brought up this subject? Did you just like have some players you were already worried about? Did you start looking through rosters? Kind of like, what was your headspace?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple of people. I've done a couple of Dynasty Cells videos already, so I'm pretty prepared and have a pretty good idea of guys that I would be targeting to move. And some guys have already moved off my rosters already. So
nice. So you're anticipating your ability to think like a GM to predict what's going to happen when Roger Goodell steps up on that stage. You're going to be in the bathroom because you're already going to know what he's going to say, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Good. That's what I like to hear. That's the confidence that I'm talking about. So I am looking at our list here, and I won't be tipping any caps, but we've got some really fun ones to talk to. But first, guys, I want to kick it over to a little bit of a fast draft promotion. Loyal listeners of the show will know it's been a fast draft offseason. You're seeing the promo code CBAS in the bottom right. All kinds of fun stuff that we can kick it to. We've got Origins contest going on where you can draft only rookies. I'm crushing in that, so maybe save your money unless you think you're smarter than me. We've got D-Up IDP contest, which I know Pete would probably love to get his hands on. We've got the Flex 4 contest, which is running as well. And we also have a beginner's Flex 4. If you're feeling a little hesitant about your ability to maybe put some cash up, you can get in there and, rake the prize, or you can fake it, whatever makes you guys, sleep well. But you know what? I could talk about this all day. I know a man who I think could explain it a little bit better.
I am proud to announce that Fast Draft now has an all-defense game called D-Up. That's right, fans of IDP finally have a real money best ball game that they can play. No more manually setting up leagues every time you want to do a draft. No. Now you can play for 10 grand, 2,000 to first. Could draft up to 30 teams, all defense. And the best part, balanced scoring, tackles for loss, pass breakups. It all factors in. Just draft 6 defensive players, top 4 into your lineup every week. It's that easy. It's so easy that this isn't just for IDP people. If you love the NFL, then you'll love this game. And for the first time with Fast Draft, you can sweat both sides of the ball on Sunday. So use your host's promo code to get a $25 deposit match, and you'll love this D-Up contest because it's about time we got one.
It is. I love when the advertisers swear. That means I get a swear as well. And I have a little bonus for you guys. At the end of that promo, Matt said $25. What if I had one better?
Seabass said that.
Well, if that guy at the table over there is Seabass.
That's right, $50 100% match with the promo code CBAS. You're going to want to get in there. The more money you put into this, guys, the more contests you potentially win, the more you're going to be able to claim me as a dependent, because I'm entering these at an unprecedented rate, and at some point the IRS or the government's going to have to step in. That's neither here nor there, though. All right. Pete, like we said, tonight's topic, veterans that have everything to lose at the NFL draft. We talked about strategy. I basically did the same thing that you did. I looked at a bunch of guys I'm dying to get rid of in Dynasty because I think their teams are looking to replace them. I'm looking at guys whose situations might be a little bit more precarious than because, there's always a few teams, right, that throw a wrinkle at us when we're not quite expecting it, almost like a Zach Charbonnet when they just drafted Kenneth Walker, that kind of thing is always available. So I will let you bat off first here. Tell the people about your first veteran that is sweaterin'. Nice.
Nice little tee up there. But yeah, for me, Chase Brown comes to mind. Part of the reason it's not so much that I'm worried that Chase Brown won't have value in Dynasty or fantasy going forward, but his price tag and his value right now, he's the RB12 off the board in startup Dynasty drafts. And if you look at some recent trades, like I look at Dynasty Data Lab, some people use Keep Trade Cut. I've seen trades where he's been, traded for a first, second, third, and a fourth. In 2025 class. I've seen him paired up with Ayuk in a second, right? I think his value is somewhere on that like 110 area, 109, 110. And I would love to probably do that deal if that offer was on the table. And when I look at Chase Brown, I think a lot of the Rachaad White situation with Bucky Irving the year prior. Obviously you're a Bucs fan, but when you think about the way they utilized Chase Brown, it felt like they tried every opportunity to somewhat replace him. They brought in Khalil Herbert. That didn't really work. Zach Moss was pretty much getting the lion's share. They were splitting it like 60-40, I would say, somewhere close to 50-50. But I just think that he'll be involved, but he's not going to be an every down back. And where, he hit his ceiling last year because they didn't really have anybody else to utilize. When you look at Player Profiler and you look at his profile, his true yards per carry was 31 last year. His yards per touch was 29th in the NFL at 4.8 yards per carry. That's not bad. But I look at the way, his explosive rating, it was 29th, 15th in breakaway run rate. So he doesn't offer a lot of home run hitting. It was really just a big volume thing for him. And so I definitely can see this team bringing in one of these running backs. And I think that's going to be a big issue for a lot of running backs in Dynasty, unless you're an established, guy that, has had high draft capital, which this team didn't really invest high draft capital in Chase Brown. So, I'd be moving Chase Brown and would be nervous, if you are holding him to see what they do bring in.
I'm completely with you on this one. And this is exactly the mentality I was hoping for because, let's see here. I don't think you don't have Debo on your list, right? That wasn't one of your picks.
No.
That's an example of like an obvious one. Like we know the Commanders are going to be moving off of Debo at some point in the near future, or at least finding a replacement for him. This is exactly what I'm talking about. And I knew you'd step up to the plate. You're looking at his totals from last year and you're right. He really didn't start ultra producing at a consistent rate. And you can not even ultra producing is the right word until Zach Moss went down. They weren't necessarily planning on this being the combo. Now, sometimes players are forced in the roles and they rise to the occasion and they become, a little bit more of a focal point like Kyron Williams. But, as far as his actual contributions to the rushing game, one game over 100 yards last year. He's not near the focal point of the attack. That's clearly the passing game, as they showed with Chase and Higgins this offseason. Re-signing Mike Gesicki was clearly a big part. As far as guys that, the offense is going to be what keeps this team in games. And if something were to happen to Chase Brown, they would be shit out of luck. So I like to use that mentality of, okay, they've invested heavily in wide receiver. The offensive line is clearly going to be a thing, but what's another part of this attack that they could keep? Where are the weak spots? And that's potentially one of them. If this season that he just had turns out to be a little bit more of an outlier. So I'm actually completely with you on that one. And I would love to know if the chat agrees. Chat, Chase Brown, he's been a big guy this last 18 months. He's been a lot of places. If you guys feel similarly, let us know. If you don't, I don't know. Just keep watching and like and subscribe like I always ask you guys to.
All right.
No notes?
What'd you say?
No notes?
No, I mean, I will see if the chat agrees.
Mhm.
The last thing I would say about Brown is just more so, I don't think he'll be completely,
Mm.
the allure is really, look, the Bengals defense is bad, so you expect
Mm.
them to be in situations where Chase Brown's going to catch the football. And crazy enough, Chase Brown was his second best pass blocking grade out of all running
Mm.
backs with a minimum of around 200 rushing attempts. So his
Yeah.
pass blocking was good. So he can be on the field on third downs as a pass blocker as well. But yeah, I mean, I like Chase Brown. I think he's going to be valuable. I think you're pretty much you have him at his ceiling right now, and I
Mhm.
can see his value only going down, not up at this point.
Yeah, this is textbook. Maybe we're overvaluing him for fantasy more than a team might be valuing his contributions towards the short-term and long-term success on the franchise. He just went right now in a startup that I'm in right now with some very sharp fellas and a couple morons. He just went mid-sixth round, just around Kenneth Walker, just around James Cook teams, and that's all. That's kind of our team is invested in other guys' range. So nobody's quite positive what to make of it, but I think we're going to be on the right side of history here.
Yeah.
I'll leave Coops shut up on the screen for just a little bit longer, just so he can sit in it and think on his sins as I get to my next one here. All right, this is the poster boy for tonight's show. He was on the thumbnail, and it brings me absolutely no joy to bring Alvin Kamara is going to be my pick for my first veterans who might be sweaterins. I'm going to say that a lot because I just came up with it the first time I said it, and I feel good about it. So just cut me some slack there. 29 years old, missed the final 4 games of last year. Chalky stuff, right? That's not really the meat of what I'm going for. He remained efficient. His receiving numbers were nice. His run game was a little bit worse than it's been in the past, although still pretty redeemable considering how much of a shit show the team was with all the injuries they had, how bad the coaching was. Derek Carr's getting hurt. They've got Jake Hayner coming in. It was just kind of a shit show going on there. So I'm wondering, Kellen Moore comes in from Philly. He just comes in and sees the impact that a Saquon Barkley has. Does he want his own Saquon? Do they go? Is this a Genty at 9 possibility team? Do they hedge, maybe shore up the line or take a quarterback? And do they go like Henderson or Caleb Johnson or Judkins in the second? I don't really know, but I do know that when Kamara is out of this lineup, and he has been known to be out of the lineup on occasion, this is arguably the worst running back core in the league. Kendre Miller's whatever Louisiana's version of a Jag is, a po' boy. I don't know. I know Jag's an anagram, but I'm just looking to be like to make fun of the Louisiana region a little bit there. And this is also a team that we've kind of seen all their parts together for a little while now. We've seen their core of, Johnson, Olave, Shaheed. This isn't like a brand new cast of characters coming in. Derek Carr, it's just a new coach. So how much different the offense looks, I'm not sure. I'm sure it will be better, but we kind of just know what Kamara's role is. And I'll be interested to see if the Saints are a team. They have a lot of holes, but if they want to maybe focus on a little bit more of a traditional run game, that one might be. So what do you think about Alvin Kamara potentially sweating it out?
I'm not as concerned about Kamara as you.
All right, moving on. So what's your next one going to be?
Look, Dynasty, it's very roster and team dependent, right? I mean, I would look at Kamara and look, if you're a contender and you can get him for cheap right now, like I'm fine. Now, I don't advocate for making trades for veteran running backs ahead of the draft, right? But I wouldn't mind buying Kamara if they do bring somebody else in, because Kamara, I know Kellen Moore is probably going to want to bring in another running back, right? Kamara is going to turn 30. But I mean, Kamara still looks good. The biggest concern with him is really the injuries for me. He's always banged up. But I mean, when you look at him, I mean, breakaway run rate still 15th, right? It's not sexy, but he's still at 10 breakaway runs. Explosiveness wise, he's ranked number 8 right now for player profile. So he still has all of that, and he's still creating yards as well. He was 9th in the NFL last year for yards created. I think it's really, and his route participation is important too, right? His route participation was 55.6%, which is second in the NFL. Routes run, he was 6th. Target share, he was number 1. On the field for running back. So I think with Kamara, it's super team dependent, right? If you're a contender and he's your RB3, think you're feeling okay, right? I mean, to have him,
Yeah.
right? That's fine. But I would also say that he's definitely has a strong possibility to lose value, but I just don't know how much value he can really lose at this point anymore because his age is already up there, right? So I feel like that's kind of baked into his cost right now. And I think he's around RB16 in startups. So I wouldn't be super excited rostering him, not at all. But I think he's going to provide a good floor because he's still going to catch the ball a decent amount with Derek Carr in this Kellen Moore offense, in my opinion.
Sure. And I'm with you. And you said something in there that I think is, and when I say I'm with you, it hinges on this point. It is who they take is going to be very important to me. You know, if it's a late day 2 pick or a day 3 pick, I'm not even remotely worried. I just wonder if they look at Olave and Shaheed and Johnson and say, let's see what we have in year 1. Or if, like I said, when I started this segment, do we already know what that looks like? And let's get a fresh crop in here. So it'll completely depend upon where the Saints go in this draft. Do they lean offensive because they have an offensive coach who knows? But, you know, it's like, it is basically like a few years ago, right? They take Kendre Miller. Some people liked Kendre Miller coming out. I wasn't really too familiar with his game, and I'm still to this day not very familiar with his game as we sit here a couple years later. So we'll see. And this is one where, you know, you went Chase Brown and it was a little bit more about him as a player. I go Alvin Kamara, and it's a little bit more about, are they going to find him a Mark Ingram? Could he thrive more in his older age with kind of that 50-50 split that I personally wouldn't love to see as an Alvin Kamara bag holder, but trying to get in the head of the New Orleans Saints. And that has been, that's been a fool's errand, as I found over the years.
Yeah.
All right.
That's fair. Yeah. Well, I know you pull up Coop, but before to close out, right? I think Kendre Miller is an interesting one where it's just like, will we see it? New coaching staff, right? Like at least Kamara is established, right? Like I've always liked Kendre Miller, but obviously there was that weird Dennis Allen thing going on, and I think Kendre Miller can be a good running back, but I don't think the coaching staff's going to look at him and be like, yeah, I feel great about him being the RB2. Yeah. So I definitely think they're bringing in a guy. It's just a matter of when. I mean, I would be shocked if every team in the NFL doesn't draft a guy at some point in this draft. There's so many good running backs.
Yeah, you really have to scroll far down to find an example of like, oh, here's somebody that I don't even really I haven't seen most of the scouting report on him, let alone like people aren't high on him. I mean, it feels like if I haven't heard about a guy at this point, then he's playing in like my local YMCA. We got a quick trade request here. Slashy wants to know Brian Thomas and Godwin for Chase. That's a great one. I'll let you go here, and then depending on how I like your answer, I'll follow.
Yeah, it's a good offer. I think I'm still sticking with Chase, unless for some reason you think in the next 2-3 years that Brian Thomas is going to become really like, 1 or 2 points off per game. Because I like to look at points per game. That's I like to look at that when checking a guy's production as opposed to just their fantasy finish on the year. So if you think that they're going to be within like 2 points, I'm sure I'm happy getting Godwin, but I'd rather get a pick over Godwin because Godwin's getting up there in age too, right? I mean, I think I'd still prefer the Chase side. It's not a bad offer. I really like Brian Thomas. He's a top 7 dynasty wide receiver right now, but I'm sticking with Chase. I'd have to be going full rebuild, and even that I want to rebuild with a guy like Chase. I need to be getting a lot if I'm moving Chase. It's just not enough.
Yeah, how good Chase is at his age already versus, could Brian Thomas get there? Probably, but it's still not for certain. I'll say this, if you have a win now team or very win now team, I'd probably flip a coin, and while that coin's in the air, maybe take a shot of like Rumple Mints or something and then see what happens. Because I do like Godwin for a couple more years here, even with the injury, even coming back. I think he's still going to bounce back to be a very nice player. So Chase is obviously the score here, but it is a good trade. So maybe, reevaluate your situation. I do want to shout you out, Pete. The Player Profiler team loves when you bring up those references to the site right now. I love it. And who doesn't love that?
Just trying to get some brownie points, I'm on your show. So, I gotta show respect to the Shield.
That's
The
right.
player
That's what we do.
profiler shield, not the NFL shield.
No, the NFL Shield. That's my bag. That's my corner. So you don't
Yeah.
even want to come play in that game right
We
now. So maybe
never disrespect over there.
no. If you keep those references up, they'll send you a cool sorority tumbler like they sent me, which is just they take care of their boys around here.
Yeah, love to see that.
Triple D. Who knows? That must be a diners drive-in dive thing. All right, let's get to your next pick here. We've got you got a fun one. Tell us about your second veteran.
Yeah, so Joe Mixon is probably is my next guy here. When looking at Mixon, it's ironic we just talked about Kamara, and I'm just double checking really quick. Yeah, I mean Kamara RB17 in startups right now. Joe Mixon's RB16. Joe Mixon, right when he got to the Texans, his contract was a 3-year deal, right? 16 million guaranteed, 25 million, so 8.5 per. And when you look at his contract and what he has guaranteed left, after this year, they can practically move on from him next year, and it'd be a $2 million hit, but they would save $8 million, right? And they would eat $2 million. So I think we're getting close to the end of the road with Mixon. Look, Mixon was phenomenal to start the season. He's a guy that constantly, like, I've always stayed away from and always end up wishing that I didn't. For whatever reason, I don't know. I just never owned Joe Mixon in fantasy. And that's nothing. I mean, but when you look at what he did last year in PPR, right? 26 points week 1, 8 points week 2, then 27, 26, 23, 16, 17, 35, right? Then he deals with an injury, right? I think it was around week 12, right? And then he went 9.5, 21.9, and then it was 10.6, 8.1, 5.9, 3.8, right? Went through a pretty tough stretch there at the end of the season when you needed him the most, and then had a really solid championship game with 16.9 points. But if you had him on your roster, there's a chance you didn't even make it to the championship game if he was starting, because he got you 3.8 points in the semis and 5.9 in the initial first round. So I just worry about dead legs there. This is a guy that has a ton of tread on his tires. He's been in the league a really long time. And I definitely think they're going to move on from him after this season. He's been in the league 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 years. This is year 9. And he's 28.7, right? So he's about to turn 29. And then he'd be 30 next year. So again, similar to Kamara, like, this is a guy who, if you're in a win now mode and he's your RB3, I feel comfortable with that. But if you're not competing, he's probably maybe a hold, or you're probably packaging him up with somebody else, right? Sure. If maybe you're looking to move up in the first round, right? And you have like the 108, and you maybe package him up with the 108 to move up to like the 105, right? Because you're getting into that next tier in that first round for rookies. So that's my thing. I mean, I just worry that he fell off a lot last year and got dead legs towards the end of the season. And I just do think that there's a solid chance that they're going to bring somebody in. Now, will it be day 2, day 3? Definitely not day 1, but they need O-line help. So they're probably going to invest there early, but
sure.
I'm with you. He's a big volume guy. That was my issue.
I was hoping to be a little bit more antagonistic, but you've come up with 2 ones that I think are absolutely fantastic. And they're both of yours are really indicative of like potentially seeing a league pendulum swing on the running back position, whether it's necessarily the right move or not, the right capital, whatever it is. I mean, how content is this team to just slam Joe Mixon into a stone wall 20 times a game for what's going to be the next season, maybe season and a half? You just don't see offensive lines improve overnight, especially the way they've gone about it. They've done the opposite. Now, I don't think their line could get any worse than it did last year, but I don't think with the moves they've done so far are going to make it any better. New scheme change, what have you, sure. But I'm with you as far as like, I think this is a smart team, and I think they know what the moves are and when to make them. Did they overplay their hand last year? I'm not sure. The Diggs signing looked good at the time. Tank Dell was doing okay before he got injured. Not great, but okay. I mean, they made the playoffs and they lost to the Chiefs. That happens to most teams. So they don't have too much retooling to do on the defense, maybe the defensive interior of the line. Otherwise, a wide receiver and a running back, and this team's going to be looking pretty good. And emphasis probably on the running back. They acquire Christian Kirk. I mean, it's just like talked about with the Bengals, right? Where are the holes? Joe Mixon isn't necessarily a hole, but like you said, he's going to be 29. He's losing juice. Just feels like a smart move.
Yeah, I agree. And the last note on him, Joe Mixon did last year what Joe Mixon does. He had a bunch of explosion games, and then kind of, was about a 10-point guy. That's just what it was. I mean,
Yep.
touchdowns really inflated him. He had 2 games with 2 touchdowns, 1
Yeah.
game with 3 touchdowns. Like the touchdowns really inflated. And then when you look at his yards per carry, I mean, it wasn't really great. I mean, 3.9 is fine, right? But he was 45th in the NFL, and his yards per touch were 4.7, right? So, which is good for 30th. And so he's similar. If he doesn't fall into the end zone, how much is he going to catch the football? It's just so I'm not in love with him, but I unfortunately don't know what you're getting if you trade him straight up. So you probably need to package him.
Yeah, you can tell that his production, it didn't fall off of a cliff, but it fell off of a cliff based upon what he was doing before with the Diggs and the Tank Dell injury. So if he's going to be your second best weapon out there, teams can key in on that. They can just absolutely crush the offensive line. Don't feel great about it. So I love that. Love Joe Mixon. God bless him. And you can tell by where he's going in Dynasty Start-offs that everybody's been burned by him at some point. Maybe the Texans are on their way. So we'll see what happens there in Houston. Love that. All right, what are we at right here? We are at what some people call the C block of the show. So I'm going to kick us to a little bit of a fun ad break, and then we will close out with the big dogs.
If you play in Dynasty, you need Dynasty Deluxe, our premium package for Dynasty Leaguers. We rank over 300 players, updated every week, all year long. And there's a win now mode and a rebuild mode with superflex and tight end premium controls. And a Dynasty League sync where you can say, sync down all of my sleeper teams, all my FFPC teams. And then you can browse around your leagues for who has needs. And then you can use our trade finder to see what kinds of trades are happening in leagues that are similar to the one I want to do. Then you can analyze trades using our trade analyzer, which balances the lifetime value, which includes pick values out to like 2028. All of that plus the rookie guide, $25 value is included. So if you're just in one Dynasty League, Dynasty Deluxe is well worth it. And use your host's promo code, and you can bump up to all in and get $25 off.
That's the way to do it, folks. The Dynasty Deluxe. Who doesn't love that? Dynasty Deluxe. I can tell that my fans out there are using this, and they're absolutely crushing the AFS brought to you by Player Profiler strategy. You know how I know that, Pete? Is because I have 3 trade offers as this show went live. So people are not only trying to take advantage of me while I'm on air and drinking, they're trying to take advantage of me with my own team. They're trying to use the Player Profiler Dominator Deluxe against me. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, I knew you're sipping on something a little strong. So, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, so.
Oh, I just got offered Brian Thomas and Chris Godwin for Jamar Chase. I wonder who that was.
No way.
All right. Well, I guess I've outed myself and my inability to keep up with my own teams as I'm live.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you do have to hit accept. I mean, you were kind of on the fence there, so maybe you have to flip a coin and accept or decline live on the show.
Decline live on the show. Oh, it's so not my style. He's got me in a pinch here. So as a man of my word, I will have some rumplements after the show and seriously consider the offer. So I do want to appreciate the loyal listeners of the show for always taking advantage of me and my financial situation. Okay. What do we got here? We've got my next one here. And this one is another one. I'm telling you, my list made me sad, and I hope that none of these come to fruition. I'm going with Derrick Henry here. Now, this has absolutely nothing to do with Derrick Henry's ability, has nothing to do with his production, has nothing to do with anything. I'm never going to doubt Derrick Henry for the entire time that he's able to play football on the field. I'm not going to devalue his role to the Ravens or any rushing attack. It does just feel like he's the other half of the coin to Alvin Kamara. He will be 32 on January 4th. This is a team with not a lot of holes, but if they lose anything in any of these positions, they do kind of take a step back. They don't have a ton of depth. So this has, like I said, less to do with his ability to produce and more to do with them always having at least a credible threat on the field, especially with the weight that he carries for the focal point of your attack. I like Justice Hill, but I like Justice Hill in his role now as kind of a spark plug coming off the bench. Same thing with Keaton Mitchell. They had 192 yards on the ground last year per game, which was one of the top 30 seasons of all time. But more importantly, it was up 50 yards from their previous 4 seasons. So you've got weapons, you've got the quarterback, you've solidified the offensive line and free agency. You're constantly in an arms race with, KC, Buffalo to kind of always have this premium team. You take 50 yards per game off of this team, whether it's through injury or anything else, God hope not. I think you put them closer towards that Texans and Chargers unit. So, I'm not even necessarily thinking in this in terms of where they take a running back, although I am picturing maybe like day 2, maybe mid day 2, something like that. They have some holes on the roster that are minimal in my mind, but I could just see them not wanting to field a crappy running back when the time comes. So am I panicking here on Derrick Henry, or is this realistic?
I mean, look, 31 years old. Derrick Henry's getting up there, 31.2, right? So by this time next year, he'll be 32, right? He's not going to turn 32 until after the season's over. But I understand the concern with him. Look, he scored the most touchdowns in the NFL last year, but when you look at his receptions, right, he really didn't catch a lot of passes. And so it feels like he is going to become maybe touchdown dependent at some point, right? And then you really were my biggest concern with him really is the injuries, though, because when you look at how he is on the field, and I don't have the metrics in front of me, but I mean, he looks as fast as ever, which is crazy, a guy at his size, but number 1 in breakaway runs at his age, at his size, right? So I think for him, it's really just like, is he going to stay healthy? Sure. Does he take, a guy, it's kind of like a center in basketball. Like once they start to get banged up on their legs, like it's over for them. Yeah. Right. And that's kind of similar with him for me, where it's like at his size, at his age, if he does take a bad hit to the legs and does get banged up there, how does he respond? We saw how the issues with the foot, in Tennessee before he came over. And so I don't think you're wrong. I would say if I had Chase Brown, I would be comfortable flipping Brown for Henry if I could get like a high second round pick. Like
something plus.
That. Yeah, I would definitely do something like that. Like even if you could maybe get somebody who really values Chase Brown, you maybe get like a 112 in Henry for Chase Brown, and maybe toss in a 2 or a 3, a late 2 or 3. So I'd be comfortable doing that. But I understand the concerns. If you are not a contender, there's no reason to roster Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I think we could be looking at like a really strong 8 weeks of the next season where it's like, here we go again. And then, you just take one funky blow to the lower leg and you're up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. So God forbid anything were to happen. I just wonder, you brought up a really good point, and actually something I had in my notes, but I panicked because I was just so nervous to talk in front of you guys, is the receiving game. And that's never been a part of his game. But I do wonder, when these teams hit a wall like the Ravens have time and time again, when do they start looking at ways that they can get better? And maybe having a versatile receiving back is that one. Justice Hill can take a wheel route like nobody else, but as far as having a diverse route tree, they don't necessarily have the players in the room right now. Is that even on the menu for them? I don't know. That could be pure speculation, but always trying to look for what these teams could be thinking. Ravens, smart organization, so on and so forth. But who knows? We'll see. That's neither here nor there. So I'll kick it back to you here. Tell us about your very last, and my personal favorite of the ones you came up with, veteran who will be sweating.
Yeah, this is not like a sexy one, but it's Cole Kmet. And I think this is more of like I picked 2 really old players, right? Now I'm picking a guy, he's 26 years old. Tight ends age like fine wine, kind of like left tackles and tackles in general in football. But at 26 years old, Cole Kmet's had an interesting career, right? I mean, his best season was in 2023 on a points per game basis. He was 9th, right? Last year, 26th, and that's with the upgraded quarterback with Caleb Williams. Now, stepping in is Ben Johnson at this point. What can you get in trade value for Cole Kmet? I don't know. You might find a guy that's desperate at tight end who really likes the Ben Johnson move. And if that's the case, you might be able to, if I could ship off Cole Kmet for like a mid-second rounder, I would do that, because I could see them bringing in a dynamic tight end. This is a very deep class. I like the kid out of Oregon, Ferguson.
Oh, yeah.
I think I think Ben Johnson's going to look at ways to get more dynamic. And right now, you look at their running back room, they need to fix that. They have the receivers. They retooled on the offensive line. I still think they're not done in the trenches, but I think tight end could be an upgrade. And Cole Kmet to me is just he's not a sexy player. I've never been impressed with him. He's not a fluid route runner at the tight end position. And I just think this is a good class. And I think there's a solid chance that they do bring somebody else in.
I could not agree more. And the reason this was my favorite pick of yours is because I think this is the ultimate position where people just assume this is like the guy for the next 3 or 4 years. And it honestly rarely ever is unless you have a Kittle, a Kelsey, a Gronk. I mean, look at what these teams have shipped guys out for less. I mean, it's a funky funk. The Bears, or not the Bears, sorry, the Lions, they had no problem shipping out TJ Hawkinson. It just didn't fit the mold for what they were going for, and they got a good return. If players like that are comfortable leaving an offense, I mean, Cole Kmet, I mean, this guy, he could be a day one. This could be a Tyler Warren team. So, you could see this guy shipped out. They lose no money. They think maybe $1 million dead cap hit if they cut him at any time over the next 2 years. They already have – we've already seen this unit not work very well together, and maybe trimming some of the fat and letting it coalesce under a little bit more of a target consolidation would be the move to go. And I love when teams do that anyways. So he's just not – I just don't think he's that guy. So I sign off on this with first name and last.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
Nothing else to add, but I'm excited to hear your last guy because I didn't look at the sheet to see your last player. So this will be a surprise to me.
It will be a surprise to you, and it'll be one that is. I tell you, this is a list of heartbreaking players to me, and you can bring me some insight here because talk about wanting to be wrong. We're going with Courtland Sutton, wide receiver, Denver Broncos, 29 years old. This is the only list in America that has Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, and Courtland Sutton on it. I can assure you that. I can assure the listeners that. I feel very strongly about that. First year without Judy rocked when you consider, not just the expectations of the team and the passing offense, but kind of just the consistency that he showed once they started to gel. I'm not here to debate his merits. I really like Courtland Sutton as a player. I really like his prototype in a Sean Payton offense, that traditional X. I just wonder how long this regime can go on without having an explosive passing attack. You have to go back to 2014 to find the first time that the Broncos were over league average in passing. They've drafted one wide receiver in the top 40 since 2010, and that guy's currently playing on the Browns. So you have Sutton. I just wonder if offense is the priority for the team this year. I mean, everyone keeps talking about running back, and I would love a great running back to go to this team. But I feel like wide receiver could potentially be just as in play, especially as you start to see these new mock draft rankings come out where, we had Ted at the top for a long time. And now, we have Travis Hunter. We're associating him with wide receiver. So he's number one. And then you maybe have Matthew Golden, number 2, Ibuka, number 3. I saw Ted as number 4 today. So you get into those mid-first round, mid to late, you could be looking at some guys that a lot of people still feel like could be a very good day one starter. And I just say that more because Sutton's contract is up at the end of this season, so he'll be a free agent. This next contract he signs will probably be his last big one if he can get a big one. I think that he can. So I just wonder now, does his shot at the pie and does his longevity with the team take a back seat if they focus on, they're already a playoff team, so committing to win now, committing to winning 3 years from now, committing to winning 5 years from now. Their core is very young. You know this. I mean, all of their good players are essentially under 30 years old, and a lot of them are even in that 24 to 26 range. So building for now, but building for the future. I'm just curious if this is like the sad version of this guy's been very good to the franchise and has come a long way as far as recovering from injury and bringing stability, but it is a business league. And I just wonder if they look for youth when it comes to the wide receiver position.
Yeah. I mean, you picked the right guy to ask because I obviously am the resident Broncos fan here. But when looking at Courtland Sutton, 29 years old, right? Turning 30 this season. And to your point, I do think that they're going to try to get young. There's a lot of reports, from beat reporters in Denver that, wide receivers not the route they're going in round one. But Sean Payton's done a really good job where we don't really know what they don't really let a lot out. They're very good and tight-lipped. So it wouldn't surprise me if Egbuka is there, if they do take a swing on a guy like him or a guy like Jaden Higgins at some point. I mean, I like Courtland Sutton, but to your point, there's been talks about contract extensions. Is he going to get one? I don't know, but this has always been an issue within the last few years. And, he's been disgruntled about his contract and this and that. They gave him a little more money last year in a restructure, gave him more guarantees. No contract yet. And like you said, he is going to walk next year if he's not extended. And they're probably not going to want to pay him because I think he's going to probably want like 20 to 22 million a year. In that range is probably what he's expecting based on the market right now. So I think Sutton's a solid sell. I think he's fine to hold if you have him because I think he's going to have another solid year no matter who they bring in. But from a long-term standpoint, there's not much insulation holding on to him because I don't think he'll be in Denver, or it's very possible he's not in Denver after this season.
Yeah, it does feel like he could maybe if they don't hold on to him, he could be doing maybe not this bad, but the Calvin Ridley arc where it's like he's in one team for another year and then another team trades for him or signs him or something like that. So I think he's a better player than Calvin Ridley, and I would love to see him compensated specifically in Denver, but if not, who knows? He's been there for me when I've needed him the most. So I appreciate your insight there. Pardusky wants to know how much Crystal Pepsi do I need to buy for Chuck to get 22 million? A pretty good amount. Boy, they're coming in. You guys are gonna have to download the podcast version of this. I am wicked late. What did I miss? What did you miss? Well, let's recap it right now. That's my boy Destro right there. So I'll recap for him real quick. We gave out 6 players. I'll recap mine. I gave out Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, Courtland Sutton, and Pete, tell the people about yours.
Joe Mixon, Chase Brown, and Cole Kmet or mine.
Beautiful. Just 6 guys that are going to be sweating it out come the NFL draft or not. And this podcast will age like spoiled milk. So you know what? It's not about that. It's about the vibes and the hard work that's put into entertaining you guys. It's about Pete coming on the show and laying the wood. Feels good, feels fantastic. So I do want to appreciate everybody for stopping by tonight. Pete, I'll give you the floor here to plug what you have coming up, where the people can find you, and all the good stuff.
I mean, you can find me at the FFfaceoff. That's pretty much where I do most of my work. I have some small things possibly going on in the background, some possible announcements coming up, depending on some things shake out on some new opportunities, but more to come on that. But if you do follow me, go ahead on Twitter. That's Supernova38 with 2 R's in super. That's where you can find me. But love coming on, Chuck, and can't wait to be on again.
Absolutely. We'll set up some more fun stuff as the season goes on. As always, guys, Chuck Bass, another fantasy show. Really appreciate everybody's support this offseason. I want to thank Player Profiler and Fast Draft for all the collaboration efforts that's been going on. So these shows will keep rolling out every Wednesday at 8. Eventually, I'll start giving you guys cash out of my pocket to keep you watching the show, whatever it takes, whatever I can do to retain you guys as viewers to cover up my lack of talent, my lack of ability. So Pete, as I do with every show, give me a number 1 through 5 and I will get us the hell out of here.
2.
2. Oh, you couldn't have picked the perfect one. This is so Pete.
If you could hand this one to my boyfriend.
Fuck you.
Whiskey? Moving in with my boyfriend,
Fuck
Ian.
you.
The boyfriend was saying the other day.
Fuck you.
I've got to get Scruffy back to my boyfriend and then
Fuck you.
Fuck you!